Hello everyone, I'm Vonnie and today I'm going to explain the chemical reaction. What is chemical reaction? The chemical reaction happens when the two or more substances react together to form a new substance. The below is an example of chemical reaction. The left side is the reactants and the right side is the products. In today's lesson, I'm going to explain about three subtopics. Number 1, we have chemical equation. Number 2, the general types of the chemical reaction. And the third is specific types of chemical reaction. Okay, starting with number 1, the chemical equation. The chemical equation is a symbolic representation of chemical reaction. Next, there are some of the signs and how to read them. S, solid form. L, liquid form. G, gas form. AQ, diluted form. Plus means plus and reacts with. Arrow means yields or forming. Arrow with a triangle on it means when heated yields. Arrow with an leg means when undergo electrolysis yields. And the two arrow with opposite direction means when partially reacts or ionized. Now, we are going to learn to read the chemical equation. Number 1, we read the equation as 4 moles of aluminum when reacts with 3 moles of oxygen gas yields 2 moles of solid form of aluminum oxide. Number 2, we read that as water will undergo electrolysis yields hydrogen gas and oxygen gas form. Number 3, we read this equation as potassium in powdered form when reacts with calcium chloride in diluted form yields potassium chloride in diluted form and calcium in the powdered form. The next slide is the law of conservation of mass. In every chemical reaction, the mass of the reactants and the mass of the products are conserved. Now, number 2, the general types of chemical reaction. We have the first one is direct combination or synthesis. It's a reaction in which 2 or more substances combine to form a single new substance. The general equation is A when reacts with B yields AB. For example, sodium when reacts with oxygen gas yields sodium oxide. Number 2 is the composition reaction or analysis. It's a reaction in which a compound breaks down into 2 or more simpler substances. The general equation is BC when yields B and C. The example is ammonia when yields nitrogen gas and hydrogen gas. The third is single replacement. It's a reaction in which one element replaces a similar element in the compound. A when reacts with BC yields AC and B. In the general reaction, element A is a metal and replaces element B, also a metal, in the compound. When the element that is doing the replacing is a non-metal, it must replace another non-metal in the compound, and the general equation becomes A when reacts with BC yields BA and C. Next, we have the activity series of metals and halogens. Example of the single metal replacement. Barium when reacts with sodium nitrite yields barium nitrite and sodium. The example of single halogen replacement is chlorine gas when reacts with aluminum bromide yields aluminum chloride and bromine. Number 4, we have double displacement. It's a reaction in which the positive and the negative ion of two ionic compounds exchange places to form a new compound. The example is ammonia when reacts with barium hydroxide yields water and barium nitride. The third subtopic is specific types of chemical reaction. Number 1, we have the direct combination. It divides into 6 numbers. Number 1, combination of metal with oxygen. The general equation is metal and oxygen yields metallic oxide. Example, 4 moles of sodium when react with oxygen gas yields 2 moles of sodium oxide. Number 2, the combination of a non-metal with oxygen. And the general equation is non-metal and oxygen yields non-metallic oxide. Example, carbon when reacts with oxygen gas yields dicarbon monoxide. Number 3, we have combination of a metal with non-metals with the general equation of metal and non-metal yields ionic compound. Example, 2 moles of potassium when reacts with chlorine gas yields 2 moles of potassium chloride. Number 4, combination of the two non-metals with the general equation non-metal plus non-metal forming covalent or molecular compound. Example, nitrogen gas when reacts with 3 moles of hydrogen gas yields 2 moles of ammonia. Number 5, combination of an element with a compound. With the general equation of element plus compound yields new compound. Example, oxygen gas when react with 2 moles of carbon monoxide yields 2 moles of carbon dioxide. The last one, we have combination of two compounds with the general equation compound 1 and compound 2 yields new compounds. Example, potassium oxide when reacts with water yields 2 moles of potassium hydroxide. B, we have the composition reaction. The first one, the composition of metallic oxide with the general equation metallic oxide when heated yields metals and oxygen. The second is the composition of non-metallic oxide. Non-metallic oxide when heated yields non-metal and oxide. The third, the composition of ionic compound with the general equation ionic compound when heat yields metal and non-metal. Next, the composition of covalent or molecular compound. With the general equation, covalent compound yields non-metal 1 and non-metal 2. The fifth one is the composition of chloride. Chloride when heated yields metallic oxide and oxygen. And the sixth, the composition of carbonate. Carbonate when heated yields metallic oxide and carbon dioxide. The composition of bicarbonate. Bicarbonate when heat yields carbonate, water, and carbon dioxide. The last, the composition of hydrates. Hydrated salt when heat yields anhydrous salt and water. Replacement. The first one is replacement of metal by metal with the general equation of metal when reacts with compound 1 yields compound 2 and metal. The example is 2 moles of potassium when reacts with calcium chloride yields 2 moles of potassium chloride and hydrogen gas. Number 2, replacement of hydrogen from water with the general equation of metal when reacts with water yields metallic hydroxide and hydrogen gas. The example is 2 moles of potassium when reacts with 2 moles of water yields 2 moles of potassium hydroxide and hydrogen gas. Third, replacement of hydrogen from steam. With the general equation, metal when reacts with steam yields metallic oxide and hydrogen gas. The example is magnesium when reacts with water yields magnesium oxide and hydrogen gas Number 4, the replacement of water from acid. With the general equation, metal and acid yields salt and hydrogen gas. The example is 2 moles of aluminum when reacts with hydrogen chloride yields ammonium chloride and 3 moles of hydrogen gas. Number 5, replacement of halogens by a halogen. With the general equation, halogen 1 and compound 1 yields compound 2 and halogen 2. The example, chloride gas when reacts with sodium bromide yields sodium chloride and bromine. The last one is double displacement reaction. Number 1, we have displacement of a compound by compound. With the general reaction is compound 1 and compound 2 yields compound 3 and compound 4. Example, aluminum sulfate when yields with 6 moles of sodium hydroxide yields 2 moles of aluminum hydroxide and 3 moles of sodium sulfate. Number 2, neutralization of reaction. With the general equation, acid and base yields salt and water. The example, 2 moles of hydrogen chloride when reacts with barium hydroxide yields barium chloride and 2 moles of water. Number 3, we have combustion. There are 2 types of combustion, complete and incomplete. Complete combustion has general equation, which is organic compound plus oxygen gas yields carbon dioxide and water. The second one is incomplete combustion with the general equation, which is organic compound and oxygen gas yields carbon monoxide and water. Now, let's solve this question together. Now, let's identify this reaction. Number 1, we can read it as 2 moles of lithium when reacts with barium oxide yields lithium oxide and barium. The chemical reaction is replacement of a metal by metal. Li is a metal and barium oxide is the compound. The product is lithium oxide, which is the compound. Barium is metal. This chemical equation is also a single replacement because lithium is a metal and the reaction uses the general equation of A when reacts with BC yields AC and B. The next question, we can read this as 2 moles of lithium chloride when undergo electrolysis yields 2 moles of lithium and chlorine gas. This chemical equation is a decomposition reaction because it uses the general reaction of AB yields A and B. This chemical equation is also the composition of ionic compound because lithium chloride is an ionic compound and lithium is metal while chloride is not a metal. That is all for today. Thank you for listening and see you next time.